Welcome to Good Friday service. As you can see, it's a little bit of a different service. We'll have this, I guess it's music, it's ambiance that we're playing in the back. We're only going to sing one song today. We are going to sing Were You There? And that is at the end of the service. I'm not really preaching today. I'm giving some brief reflections, but most of our time, the overwhelming majority of our time is going to be spent in Scripture. So we're going to be going through all of Mark 14, all of Mark 15 up until the very end. We get to, I believe it's 15 verse 38. So if you want to walk through that, just knowing where we're going, and I'm going to read for us this evening. But I want to begin just with a period of, let's say, 30 seconds. I'll give it 45 seconds of reflection. It won't be silent because we have the ambiance. But if you're listening at home, 45 seconds. Begin. Can look up to the screen. We have our call to worship. I will read for you the italicized, and then you will read in unison the bold. Stay here and keep watch. We will stay. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Our first reading begins Mark 14. Verse 1. It was 2 days before the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread. The chief priests and the scribes were looking for any way to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. For they said, "Not during the festival, or there might be a riot among the people." While he was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, as he sat at the table, a woman came with an alabaster jar full of very costly oil of nard. And she broke open the jar and poured the ointment out on his head. But there were some who said to one another in anger, "Why was this ointment wasted in this way? For this ointment could have been sold for more than 300 denarii and the money given to the poor." And they scolded her. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, and you can show kindness to them whenever you wish, but you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body before its burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the good news is proclaimed, in the whole world what she has done will be told and remembered of her." Then Judas Iscariot, the one who was one of the 12, went to the chief priests in order to betray him to them. When they heard it, they were greatly pleased and promised to give him money. So he began to look for an opportunity to betray him. The woman sees something that no one else sees. While everyone else is thinking about what's up next. Everyone else is trying to lobby for their position while they're trying to be reasonable. She pours everything she has into that moment with Jesus. There is no guarantee that Jesus will not rebuke her. There is no guarantee that anyone will see what she did as positive. It was love, wasteful love. But when you love like this, it's always going to feel like waste. I think about the late theologian John Shelby Spong, who once spoke of the love of God as a person who turns on both taps in the sink, letting it fill to the brim and overflow the sink in the bathroom, splashing onto the floor, finding every crack in the flooring, finding every dusty, forgotten corner, the grime built up over years under the baseboards, washed fresh with the soap and water. That is what God's love is, poured out indiscriminately. Demonstrated by this woman who goes unnamed in the text, not protecting anything, not protecting what she has, not protecting her reputation, but giving everything. And Jesus receives it. I want you to notice here how Jesus is changed. This is a different Jesus than what we're used to. This is a Jesus who knows his end is near, who isn't just saying, well, we should sell this oil and give the money to the poor. That is a very Jesus thing to do. It isn't Judas who first offers it in this text. Maybe in another gospel, it's Judas who's using this as a manipulation to steal the money. In this text, it's the faithful disciples acting the way that Jesus likely would have acted in other circumstances. But Jesus knows that this isn't other circumstances, that the end is near. Picking up where we left off. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb was to be sacrificed, Jesus' disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" So he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is the guest room that I might eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, finished and ready. Make preparations for us there." So the disciples went out and went into the city and found everything as he had told them. And when they prepared the Passover meal, When it was evening, he came with the 12. And when they had taken their places and were eating, Jesus said to them, "Truly, I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." This is our first time when we're going to read together here. I'll offer it to you. We are going to be the disciples in this one. Read along on the screen about 3/4 of the way down. They began to be distressed, saying to him and one another after each other, "Surely not I." He said to them, "It is one of the 12 who is dipping bread into the same bowl with me. For the Son of Man goes as it is written, but woe to the one by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better if that one had never been born." While they were eating, he took a loaf of bread, and after blessing it, he broke it, giving it to them and saying, "Take, this is my body." Then he took the cup after giving thanks and gave it to them for all of them to drink from it. He said to them, "This is the blood of my covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly, I tell you, I will never drink of the fruit of the vine until the day when I drink of it in the new kingdom of God." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives, and Jesus said to them, "You will all become deserters, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." But Peter said to him, "Even though all become deserters, I will not." Jesus said to him, "Truly, I tell you, this very night, before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." The disciples are at dinner again, and everything starts to break apart. One among them, he announces, will betray him. Imagine being in that room for a moment. The one who you've been walking with for a year has now told you that one of your brothers, one of your sisters, one of the people who is so close, one of the people who is the most important, one of the people in this room, perhaps, is not who they claim to be. Another one, the one who is said to be the rock on which all of the church will be built, is unsteady. He will be the denier. And of the remaining 10, all 10 that night will leave him. The strange part of this story is that they don't seem to know that yet. And I think that's because most of us don't recognize in the moment who we are about to become. We never notice all of the little tiny fractures that are leading up to us becoming someone who we always told ourselves we wouldn't become. We think that we are stronger than the disciples. We think that we will be the ones to hold the line until the pressure comes. And then, just like them, so often with us, something in us gives way. But in spite of this, even though Jesus knows this, even though Jesus has already said to them these words, he still gives them his bread, his body. He still gives them the cup, his new promise to them. Knowing who they are better than they know themselves, he chooses to give himself away anyway. Our third scripture reading, the garden. They went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter and James and John and began to be distressed and agitated. He said to them, "I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here, keep awake, for I am going a little bit further, And then he threw himself on the ground and prayed if it were possible that the hour might pass from him. He said, Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, and yet not what I want, but what you want. Jesus returned and found his disciples sleeping. He said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Could you not keep awake for 1 hour? Keep awake and pray that you might not come into this time of trial. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And again he went away and prayed, saying the same words. At once he came and found them sleeping again, for their eyes were very heavy, and they did not know what to say to him. And he came a third time and said to them, Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Enough. The hour has come. The Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up. Let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. Immediately, while he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived, and with him there were a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, The one that I kiss is the man. Arrest him and lead him away under guard. So when he came, he went up to him at once and said, Rabbi, Teacher, and kissed him. They laid hands on him and arrested him. But one of those who drew near with his sword struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear. And then Jesus said to him, Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I was with you in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled. All of them deserted and fled. A certain young man was following him, wearing clothing of linen and cloth. They caught a hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. I think this is the moment. Have you had this moment when you know the thing is coming? When you know the problem is no longer escapable? This is my time in the service where I'm going to have you talk in your tables or to a neighbor and ask the question, when is a moment when you have felt like running? When is the moment when you have felt like hiding? Did you? Did it work? Go in your tables. All I will say to conclude this moment is that I labored under asking the question, have you felt like running to identify with Jesus? Or, what do you still need to wake up to? And so if that is the question that God really had for you, and I didn't hear it, you can consider that too. In what ways are we still sleeping? We move on to the trial. They took Jesus to the high priest, and all the chief priests and elders and scribes were assembled. Peter had followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest, while he was still sitting with the guards, warming himself by the fire. And he was sitting at the guards, warming himself by the fire. Now the chief priests of the council were looking for a testimony against Jesus to put him to death, and they found none. Many gave false testimony that did not agree. Some stood up and gave false testimony against him, saying, "We heard him say, 'I will destroy the temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands.' But even on this point their testimony did not agree. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, 'Have you no answer? What is it that they testify against you?' But he was silent and did not answer. Again the high priest asked him, 'Are you the Messiah, the Son of God, the Son of the Blessed One?' Jesus said to him, 'I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven.' Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, 'Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard this blasphemy. What's your decision?' All of them condemned him as deserving of death. Some began to spit on him and blindfold him and strike him, saying to him, 'Prophesy.' And the guards also took him over and beat him." Courtrooms are supposed to be a place of justice. But this is no common courtroom. This is the beginnings of an uprising. The only word for what we were about to see is not judgment. It's a lynching. There is no real crime. There is no real victim. This room is loud. There are confident, certain voices. There are stories that might initially sound true, but really are not true. Jesus says almost nothing. Not because he has nothing to say, but because the truth does not need to fight to be true. And when he finally speaks, he says something that no one expects. He says, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power." We misunderstand this verse. We often interpret "I am" that Jesus says in verse 52 as some sort of association with the great I am. We have been taught in our undergraduate Bible classes that this is Jesus proclaiming his divinity. Interestingly, this is not what scholars believe. What scholars believe that Jesus was saying here, the great sin of blasphemy that he committed, was that human beings the sons of man, the people of earth, would be seated at the right hand of power. His great blasphemy is to elevate not himself, but all of humanity with him. If the Son of Man was coming on the clouds of heaven, then the religious aristocracy would no longer have a claim to rule. But sometimes telling the truth doesn't set you free. Sometimes telling the truth gets you convicted. And yet still Jesus remains. He stays. Peter has been awful quiet, warming himself by the fire. But now we return to Peter. While Peter was below in the courtyard, one of the servant girls of the high priest came by. When she saw Peter warming himself, she stared at him and said, "You were with Jesus, the man of Nazareth." But he denied it, saying, "I do not know or understand what you are talking about." And then he went out into the forecourt, and the cock crowed. And the servant girl, on seeing him, said again to the bystanders, "This man is one of them." But again he denied it. And then after a little while the bystanders said to Peter, "Certainly you are one of them, for you are a Galilean." But he began to curse, and he swore an oath, and he said, "I do not know this man that you are talking about." And at that moment the cock crowed for a second time, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said to him, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and wept. I think this one is much harder to watch than the courtroom drama. A little girl, probably not much older than the kids that run around our church, who goes up to Peter and tells the truth. She says, You are friends with the man they have inside. She says, you are one of them. She's a child. She doesn't say it to convict him. She doesn't say it to get him crucified along with Jesus. She says it because it's true. And sometimes that's just what kids do. They tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient for the grown-ups. But Peter will not let some small girl get him into trouble. He will vehemently deny. And the reason why this one's so hard to watch, I think, is because deep down we know that Peter is not a villain. He's just like us. How many times have we been faced with the consequences of our own actions and denied and deflected and redirected? His fear is just louder than his conviction, but so is it for most of us. He says what he needs to say in order to remain safe. but his accent gives him away. He talks like a Galilean. He's afraid. But then the moment is over. No one comes and slaps him into irons. No one drags him off to be crucified, and he knows. Not because somebody tells him, but because he remembers. He remembers what his master told him. Peter does not fail because he is evil. He fails because he is human. And to be human sometimes is to fail. But even with Peter denying him, Jesus stays. Chapter 15. As soon as it was morning, the chief priests held a consultation with the elders and the scribes and the whole council. They bound Jesus and led him away to be handed over to Pilate. Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered him, "You say so." The chief priests accused him of many things. Pilate asked him again, "Have you no answer? See how many charges they bring against you?" But Jesus made no further reply. So Pilate was amazed. Now at the festival he used to release a prisoner for them, anyone whom they asked. Now there was a man called Barabbas who was in prison with rebels who had committed murder during an insurrection. So the crowd came and began to ask Pilate to do for them according to their custom. So he answered them, "Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" For he realized now that it was out of jealousy that the chief priests had handed him over. But the chief priests stirred the crowd up to have them release Barabbas for them instead. Pilate spoke to them again and said, "Then what do you wish me to do with the man that you call the King of the Jews?" And here we respond together. They all shouted back, "Crucify him." Pilate asked, "Why? Has he done something evil?" But they all shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released Barabbas for them. And after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers led him to the courtyard of the palace, that is, the governor's headquarters, and they called together the whole cohort. And they clothed him in purple cloth, twisting thorns into a crown, they put it on him, and they began to salute him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" They struck his head with a reed and spat upon him. They knelt down to pay homage to him. And after mocking him, they stripped him of the purple cloak and put his own clothes on him. And then they led him out to be crucified. This is how it happens. Not with the terrible decision of one bad leader, but with a series of small bad decisions by people. We often complain about our leaders, don't we? We complain about our governor, or our mayor, or our president, or our senators. all of them pale in comparison to who the Reverend Dr. Cornel West calls the original gangster, Pilate. Pilate was a thug, known in the ancient world for his cruelty, known in the ancient world for his savagery. Many scholars believe that part of this story is mythical. It's not literal history. The part of the story where Pilate releases a prisoner because it's so unlike Pilate to do something so generous and gracious. There is no record of Pilate ever releasing anyone. Pilate loved to crucify. And the gospel author of Mark despises the Roman government. He believes that the Roman government is primarily responsible for this whole mess, the mess that the Jews found themselves in. And so it's so interesting that he chooses to place the blame not just on the high priests and elders, as John seems to, not just on Pilate and the Roman authorities, although they were the ones who crucified him, but on the people, the crowd. I remember, not a Christian, but an interesting man nonetheless, Neil deGrasse Tyson, once saying that he never criticizes politicians. And he said, "The reason that I don't criticize politicians is because we are the ones who put them there. We are the ones who they are representing. To criticize or to fail to work with or to disrespect, degrade a politician is to say those things about the people who elected them." Pilate is pressured into this by us, by the crowd, the same people who cried Hosanna, the same ones who cried, "Crucify him." So he steps back. In other stories, he washes his hands, and he lets it happen. And the crowd, all the while, does not feel evil. They feel righteous. They feel right. Because the crowd always feels right when you're in the middle of it. No one in this story thinks that they are the villain. And so if you think to yourself that you would not have been, remember, they didn't think that they were either. But Jesus, he stays. Finally, the cross. They, meaning the Roman government, ordered a passerby who was coming from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. They brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he did not take it. And then they crucified him and divided up his clothes among them, casting lots to decide which they should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription above his charge read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on the left and one on his right. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha! You who said that you would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross." In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him, saying, "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also taunted him. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he is calling for Elijah." And someone ran and filled a sponge with sour wine and put it on a stick and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come and take him down." Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And the curtain of the temple was torn in two, from top to bottom. If we did not know this story, if we were hearing it for the first time, this is where we would expect it to turn. Are you familiar with Deus ex machina? This idea, the hand of God coming down and fixing the problem just in the nick of time. The reinforcements from Rohan, the Rohirrim, arrive just in time. It's always just in time. But instead, silence. Pain, mockery, darkness. In the Gospel of Mark, there is no thief to his left who is secretly worshiping him. There are no disciples mourning for him. There are no women waiting for his body, not yet. There is only pain and darkness. And it even gets through to Jesus. I said at the very beginning of our series on Mark, you will meet a Jesus who you are not familiar with, a Jesus who is uniquely human. The other Gospels tell the story of the crucifixion with Jesus as being the King of the Jews. Yes, he's being mocked, but we're all in on the story, aren't we? We all know that secretly Jesus was right. In the book of John, he says, "I thirst," mocking death itself. In the book of Matthew, he says, "I can call legions of angels to stand with me." In the book of Mark, he says, "I am alone." He refuses the wine mixed with myrrh, the slow sedative that would have lessened the pains of crucifixion. And if we're honest, if we only read this passage, if we only knew this, if we did not have any more of the Bible, as the early Christians did not, they only had the book of Mark. For a decade or so, this is all they had. We would know that what they knew. This does not seem like a victory. This does not seem like power. It seems like loss. It seems like death. But if you want to know what God is actually like, I think we need to look closer. God does not control the situation because he does not need to. He does not overpower his captors because it is not what he came to do. He does not escape suffering because life is suffering. He holds it. He enters into it. He puts skin on so that he can fully experience and absorb it. And then he refuses to return the retribution and punishment back on those who executed him. At the beginning, we talked about what love looks like. Radical love. Love that fills the cracks and nooks and crannies of the dirty parts of our bathroom that we never love enough to clean. The overflowing sink. This is what love looks like when it costs everything. He breathed his last. And then they laid him in a tomb. If you don't know the song, just follow. There's no music. I suppose there's a little ambiance. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they nailed him to a tree? Were you there when they nailed him to a tree? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they nailed him to the tree? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they laid him in the tomb? Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. We'll see you back here in 2 days on Easter.